Forcing Dallas to change. The climate is changing in an ever-growing community as the DFW area, with high population growth and an increase of construction, and high development areas, as small towns are becoming much less small. The dust is getting kicked into the air, and we could see an overall change every year in the DFW area, and with the rest of Texas, of course, hitting all-time highs in our summers, and within recent years, all-time lows, with dangerous freezes that are affecting our everyday people. There are two major forcing agents of climate in DFW. The population growth, of course, has been drastically growing within the last few decades comparing them to the ones before. This has been a forcing agent, of course. With an increased population, there has been an increase in development, which means there are much more natural areas being torn down to make homes and districts for accommodating the growing population, as well as higher pollutants and a higher demand for natural resources in the area, therefore adding to the already growing problem in the world. Methane emissions are also another one of those forcing agents we see in the DFW area. Aside from the growth of the population being an increase of fossil fuels, there has also been an increase in a dietary accommodation: beef. As the cattle industry has always been somewhat prominent in Texas, the demand for domestic beef has steadily grown, and this has led to a population of cattle, as well as we all know, cows lead to an increase in methane. And with this becoming a spike of vehicles and cows, we are seeing a lot more greenhouse gases in the air. Some historical context between the climate of Texas. Texas is, been fairly much, north of the equator, so it's always been a little warm. However, that mostly started beginning at the end of the Ice Age. As things started warming up, the entire world, the agriculture of Texas began to grow. The native peoples who have lived here started making farms, and of course this has led to a civilization growth. So plants and stuff started getting man-made. And of course, during the 1500s, 1600s, the Spanish influence is a major impact on Texas's climate, as they brought cattle to Texas. And this has then further introduced more cows and bulls in the rest of the state. This, of course, led to the cow state we know today, which, FYI, increases methane, increases more land that is being flattened and or plains used for cattle. That increases more methane. Of course, in the modern day, just like the rest of the world, DFW has also seen an increase in climate. However, it's not as drastic as other areas around the world. Although in the last 20 years, you can see a noticeable increase. We're going up very steadily. Some regional influence is there's a lot more trees in Texas than you might think, and that is leading to deforestation becoming a bit more of a problem than you might think. However, as things begin to grow, and these lands that were originally private property, not being used for much, are now being torn down to become commercial properties. And that is leading to a high increase of deforestation. So these areas that on a global impact might not seem as intense in the small cities and the small towns and the open farmland of the DFW area, we are noticing slight changes in the amount of trees we have. And of course, other influences that climate change might be affecting us is the butterfly migration. We all know our monarch butterflies travel quite some distance, and we love them. However, in recent years, we have been seeing some quite hits to their population. With an increase of overall heat and the removal of a lot of the plants that support our butterflies, we are seeing them decrease. Plants like milkweed have been growing around parts of Texas for years. However, with increase of population changes, climate changes with the plants just being overheated, and other influences, we are seeing those plants being removed, and this is of course leading to a decrease in the population of the monarch butterfly. As well as, when there's hotter areas down here, we are seeing a increase of bird populations as they don't need to migrate as far. This, especially the grackle, which is that annoying little blackbird that everyone seems to know and dislike, have been staying longer, and this is of course adding more natural predators to the butterflies. Of course, as well as just the environmental impact, there's also a social economic impact. With the demand of change, we are seeing a lot more companies moving to Texas. One of these major companies is Tesla, and they are hopefully going to help push for a change from using high diesel cars and gas cars to electrical vehicles, especially in the DFW, which is close to an airport. There is more push of having electric vehicles going back and forth. Although Tesla might not be building its new factory and corporate building offices, my brain just blanked on what that building is called, in DFW, it does not mean there won't be an increase overall of Texas with those electric vehicles on the roads, especially those of transport vehicles. If they carry something, it's likely those trucks are going to be switched to branded and or privated electric vehicles. And of course, continuing that push for electric alternatives in Texas, we do see an increase in jobs that are focusing on solar and clean energy. Of course, from car manufacturers to power companies, these are more apparent than ever. Things that we are seeing changing, of course, we are seeing a lot more push for those electric vehicles in the DFW area, as well as we are seeing from a political stance a push towards public transports. Small areas and cities in the DFW area, such as Denton, Texas, Frisco, Texas, and even the larger parts of Texas, such as Dallas itself, we are seeing a bigger push towards green alternatives and or less use of transport vehicles. So public transportation is becoming more pushed and more socially acceptable. And of course, small businesses are doing their part. In the DFW area, small businesses are focusing on getting solar panels on their buildings, as well as, instead of shipping internationally and or buying things internationally, they are local sourcing their areas and products. Overall, the future outlook for the area, same as the rest of the world, is still going to be increasing in temperatures as well as increasing in air pollution. Every year, we are hitting record highs and record lows, and this seems to not be stopping anytime soon. However, we are adapting to associate with that change. This, of course, will lead to more issues down the line, such as extreme heats, droughts, and wildfires. Overall, the DFW area is an area that is growing and changing a lot. With that being said, everyone is doing their part to hope things aren't going down south too hard. From small businesses, they are taking the greener options, and major companies doing their part are pushing for an idea of changing in global warming. This, of course, is still being fought by the rest of the world's issues, and the effort being put in by the DFW area is only that slightly, and we will never truly see a positive growth unless something major happens. Here are my citations. Hitting a long time on this is very difficult. 8 minutes is good enough for me. Have a wonderful night. Texas is getting hot. It's already hit us. We were snowed in a couple days ago, and now we are hitting 90-degree weather. Love it. Extremes.